Ready? Okay, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here at room 54. We're going to call the Broadband Taskforce of Dunn County to order. Roll call, I think we're missing one. What's Bill? The Bill?
And Terry.
Bill and Terry, okay. Yeah, I guess we are, right? We still got a quorum, so we're going to go on. Roll call, any public comments? None? Approval of the meeting from approval of the minutes of the last meeting? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, first and second, any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 5, discussion of work items. Digital navigators update. I'm gonna turn it over to our Dan and we'll go on from here, I guess, and see what we got going on.
Yep. So I guess short update, if you all remember back from the last meeting, Digital Navigators was a grant program that was available. I think I had like a week to try and throw something together. I had reached out to United Way. If you're unfamiliar, so there's a United Way of Chippewa Valley, which covers Chippewa County, Eau Claire County, and maybe some other ones. Not sure, just the two. Dunn County recently merged with St. Croix County, creating what is now, I believe, called the United Way of the Dunn St. Croix, Dunn St. Croix, something to that effect. Or Red Cedar, yeah, St. Croix, Red Cedar Valley. So anyway, I reached out to them. At the time, that merger was like in progress, ready to happen. So they weren't in a position to actually kind of put together any sort of a program. But the United Way of Wisconsin did apply for that Digital Navigators grant. Not sure, Mark, maybe you know the status of that, but that would be something that may benefit Dunn County in the long term as the United Way figures out how they're going to kind of go about that and how we can work with them on that.
Yep, no, we're still reviewing applications and hopefully we'll have a decision on those here sometime this month, later on this month, hopefully. That's the plan.
So once again, that wasn't necessarily a regional thing so much as Eau Claire County or United Way of Chippewa Valley had an individual program within theirs. I don't know the status of that.
I think they were going to partner with United Way of Wisconsin on that grant, but their program director for digital equity took a new position earlier this spring, so they're in transition as well. So I'm not sure where that ended up.
Yep. So,
Mr. Chairman, can you help me out a little bit? Was that a specific dollar amount applied in that grant, and was it specifically how it had to be used?
yeah, so that grant program was related to identifying ways to get devices into the hands of individuals of I don't know, remember the terminology, but it was like low income.
Yep, cover populations to low income, population over 60, veterans, people with disabilities. If I'm able to share my screen, I could show you the summary of United Way of Wisconsin's application, or at least a tidbit of what they put in for.
Yeah, go ahead.
And you can look this up. This is on the PSC website. It's available. But I just typed United Way. Chippewa Valley didn't apply for one, so just United Way of Wisconsin, and this is their big $16 million proposal. So, project proposes to provide devices throughout the state of Wisconsin, partner to distribute 33,000 devices to low-income households throughout Wisconsin. 9 digital navigators will provide digital navigation services to program recipients and support nonprofit partners to identify, distribute, upskill devices recipients so that devices, primarily laptops, can be used offline to run standard programs and online to access health, educational, employment services.
So,
and again, that $16 million proposal for 33,000 devices throughout the state.
So you say big program, but that's statewide, right? So how does that impact Dunn County? And that'll be something that we'll continue to work with our regional United Way to figure out how we can be a partner in that as they, I'm going to assume they win that grant for no particular reason other than it would be beneficial to us. So that was kind of the update there, just because I kind of we left that last meeting with me going in to see what I could do about it. And we didn't apply for anything, but that's kind of the update I have.
Just want to move on to
Yep.
item B,
Mhm.
5B.
Yes, so bead volume 2 endorsement. So we have talked about this in the past, that endorsement is the county's kind of role in the bead program. So I don't know if you have I actually provided a report this time, so you can do a little reading ahead of time, but Mark is here. He's all over it. He's going to explain this better than me, and I will let him.
Yep, so the endorsement, it has to come from the county board. It can't come from this task force. Again, it's 7 points to endorse an ISP or an applicant for their proposed project area or project unit. We don't have project units yet. We're still waiting for NTIA approval of our challenge process before we make those final determinations. They can release those. Again, it doesn't have to be a resolution. A lot of counties are going the resolution route. What we're looking for is just the action that is memorialized in the public meeting minutes with official letter of endorsement from the county. So from like the county supervisor or county clerk, or whoever sends those official notification documents saying, here are the draft meeting notes. And again, draft meeting notes are fine. We don't need, you can send the official meeting notes later on. Just, we held our county board meeting where we endorsed 24/7 broadband for the towns of Dunn and Hay River for BEAD for their projects, something along those lines. Extension does plan on coming out with some model language for like letters and some stuff to use in resolutions if you choose to go the resolution route for that. That's still forthcoming. I don't have a date on when that's being released, but it should be soon.
All right.
Well, that's endorsement.
Question?
Yep. Go ahead.
So Mark, is that one endorsement by the county or is that one endorsement per project area?
So again, good question. Counties do have the option to endorse more than one ISPs for a project unit, but it dilutes the value of the points for that application since they'd be getting the same amount of points. So no application's really getting ahead of the other. So again, and looking on what the county wants as part of their broadband plans and their needs, that's why it's important to do the engagement part with the ISPs, and you want the best service offerings for the best price that you can get for the needs of the county, and that's where your crucial endorsement points come in and communication with them.
But if there are multiple project areas within the county can endorse an ISP in each of the project areas?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
And as I was going through that, Mark, I did kind of run into a question. Sorry, multitasking here. If we were to, would the points matter from a statewide perspective, or are they more important from two people submitting in the same project unit?
Yep, it'd matter from that perspective for two applicants applying for that, and doesn't really affect the other statewide projects.
Okay.
Well, it may be for them, but from our perspective for PSE on how we go about doing the approvals of applications and awarding the grant, it doesn't matter from our perspective, but it might from the applicant perspective on all the project units they may be applying for throughout the state.
Okay. So I'm gonna steal this screen. Oh, yeah. So Yeah, you have the support and engagement, which is the town's response. Well, it's the provider's responsibility, but it is their
Correct.
engagement with the town, the local governments, which we can help facilitate, but it is.
Yep, and it's important for you guys to, help with that facilitation because you guys are the experts here and might know more than, the locals do about BEAD and the information. Because again, you guys have been working on this for a while. So you don't want those, local municipalities to be taken advantage of, just whoever ISP just going in there, can you do a letter of support for a project? And they just say, sure, without, seeing where it's going to cover, what kind of services it's going to bring, will it connect the libraries or schools possibilities? So it's important to get engaged with all that.
I'm gonna steal the screen from you here, Mark.
Yep, no worries.
All right. So, Mark kind of had referred to it. So project units, to me are an important component of that. And I don't know what those are going to be. But I do have a map here. See if I can get this zoomed in just a little bit more. It's still going to be a little hard to see, but so this area, this circle that you're looking at right here is just to the north. So this is Wheeler. Yep, this is Wheeler right here. So this area you may be familiar with, Bob, is one of the areas in Dunn County that at least I have identified as being a location of that yellow color is essentially telling us that those are unserved, underserved, or kind of a heavy area that needs to get covered. So that is one area that I have kind of looked at as being a potential project unit. And what I can tell you about that, to the left over here where you can see the 446, that is a grant that was received by Next Gen Broadband at Clear Lake. The area over to the right is an area that has received a grant for Mosaic. And to the south, this other area over here is a federal grant that was received by Charter. So I think as it's important, at least from my perspective, as we look at that, we have three providers that are kind of in a spot there. So I think it's really important for us to be able to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity to be able to receive our endorsement. Well, not equal, but equal opportunity to apply to receive our endorsement, that we may realistically, we could receive three. I won't speak out of turn from what has been shared with me, but we're only going to get two at most for that particular area of those three providers.
So only one can be endorsed, or do you want to try to endorse more than one and take your points away from one?
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to endorse two.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, where it's important for us as a committee, as much as the board has to do it the way that this is going to happen within the county, or the way I project it to happen within the county, is this task force will determine who we want the board to endorse, and that will go to the board. So the board isn't going to see all of this information. They're going to see a recommendation from this task force that is what they will do. So really it falls on this committee to say, between these two providers and what it is that they want to do in this area, this is the one that we are in favor of endorsing. So that's one area. So we go down this area right here along Highway 79 in the town of Sherman is another area that I would expect. To the left over here is 24/7, and to the right is Charter. So once again, two areas that are right on the border where it would be nice to, well, where I expect a couple of them, both of them might be interested in applying for that. And so we would have to evaluate what it is that we think is most important. And at a different meeting that I've had that Mark was at, I actually asked specifically about that area. Because to me, as I look at it, it makes sense for both of them to bid on it because of where their infrastructure might be and how that goes. And we don't know what those project units are going to be, but that's collusion, so we're not allowed to do that. So, but so that's one area, and then the other area over here. So this area right here is the village of Colfax. This is just a little area. There's actually about maybe 10 properties just off to the side there that are a stone's throw from from the village that are just not covered. And then you have this larger swath over here right next to Whitetail Golf Course. That is another area that is uncovered. This is an area that Bloomer Broadband has applied for a grant in that area multiple times. Currently have one pending with the USDA. I believe this area here, this grant 282 is Bloomer Broadband. Bloomer Broadband is off to the east, definitely, and then does cover some of this area. Then we get up into Grant, which is obviously Mosaic. This area over here to the west, that's 24/7 telecom, and Charter is in the village of Colfax. So where does that project unit fall? But either way, we're right in every one of these presumed project units are
So
right between two.
if Bloomer applied for grants in the past, have they never got them or just never followed through on it?
No, they haven't gotten them.
Okay.
They've just, I think the last one, they fell like one below the line or something like that.
Yeah, they had multiple grants in the last round and they were just under the threshold.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they continue to work on that and do that. So I guess I just wanted to share that so that you knew those areas. There may be some other areas in the county. My personal opinion on that, and I've talked to, so I guess I should share, I have received a call from Charter and from 24/7 Telecom and Mosaic, and I reached out to NextGen. I haven't talked with Bloomer yet, so just to get a feel for where they are and talk through some things. But there's a lot of little, I just call them speckling of areas. So even as you look up here in this grant, I think this is in the town of Grant, right up here in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see some yellows in there. But we know that Mosaic is covering every house in the town of Grant. So there's some things that I think are just lost in the map. And there's some other areas in southern Dunn County that are shown as unserved. But if you actually zoom into the map, you'll see that the barn is unserved, but the house is served. Right. So, and that's just a breakdown with how that map had been built. I guess no fault of anybody, but but those are essentially areas that they would be covered. If somebody wanted to put broadband into their barn, in that particular case, 24/7 would do it. So it isn't that it's uncovered, it's just not. So, but as I look at just clumps of areas in Dunn County, those are the three.
Did all of the ISPs that are involved already, are they all submitting a letter of intent, do you know?
I'm trying to decide if I share that information. One of them told me that they were not. And I mean, the process isn't over yet, but I don't I don't think it changes too much about what we would expect to see. So, the other ones that I have talked to are going to be applying for that. I know. I think you were on the meeting last week that Mosaic is quite openly pursuing BEAD. I assume 24/7 is. We are very lucky in Dunn County. We have a lot of our county covered, but 24/7 expands outside of our county as well. So I do believe, and at this point, that's all they're doing is applying to the Public Service Commission to say, we intend to apply and we will meet all these requirements and here's how we will. So it isn't about the areas, it's really about them at this particular point. So that's to say that we have some areas and I think it's good and we have competitive areas. And competition is good from a pricing standpoint. So that then brings me to what is
Before we leave that,
go ahead.
this kind of puts the task force in the position of picking winners and losers, correct?
That it does.
How do we do that?
That's what I was.
Yeah, so before we move on again here, there is a meeting following this one at the executive meeting and they're petitioning for a December meeting for the county board. So I don't know if you want.
I was gonna get to that.
Oh, you're
Yep.
gonna get to that. Okay, just so you
Yep.
know, we might have to have a December meeting, which
Yep.
we're not scheduled to have, so.
Yep. So, yes, I might have been, it just the schedule of how things have to work out. I needed to act on that before I even asked you guys if it was okay, but we do not in Dunn County have a December county board meeting. So as we talk about project units and having the different providers essentially apply to us or ask us for their endorsement and for us to evaluate that endorsement, they will not be able to start applying for these grants. This is a draft schedule, right, Mark? So the draft schedule says that they will be able to start applying on November 1st, right? Before they can realistically do any of that, they need project units. So my assumption is project units would be out before November 1st, but we don't really know. And if it isn't before November 1st, I'm guessing that date gets moved. So if you look at that from our county board schedule standpoint, we could say you need to apply so that we can do it at our November meeting, which those of you on the board or have been on the board, that is the budget meeting, which happens statutorily on the second Tuesday or the third Tuesday of the month, but it's like the 12th of November. So that would give them 11 days from the time to be able to submit all of that stuff, to get it to us, for us to endorse, decide what it is, and then try and get it to the board. That's too short of a time. So that's where the petition to the county board to hold a December meeting so that we can endorse projects at that December meeting comes from. Realistically, program units or project units could come out next week. That may change something. That would give them some time to look at that and to get some stuff together and get it to us. Then we could look at it in October and then we could realistically get it onto a November board meeting. But
Does Mark have any insight on that?
NTIA has not given us an indication on when they will approve our challenge process. So like Dan said, still waiting, and this timeline could change based on when they approve it. But they are aware of our timeline, so.
They haven't necessarily been acting with the urgency that we would hope in the past items. So, so I think part of that would be a contingency, right? We can petition to have that December meeting, and then we can say, you know what, hey, everything was taken care of, and we can pull that off. But that was my initial thought, is if we plan on approving those in December, that we could set a deadline for providers to submit to us information by December 5th. That is
That's Friday, Thursday.
that is a Thursday. And so they would provide us that information by December 5th, which typically the way that we try to do things in the county is if we were to hold our meeting on the following Thursday, the 12th, that I would be able to get that information and get it out to you so that you have a week to absorb that information prior to the meeting. That December 12th is actually the day after the county executive meeting, which is on the 11th, which technically sets the agenda for the board meeting, but that should be okay, that we can set the agenda to say that we know that there's going to be an action item approving the BEAD endorsements, right? So we can set that ahead of time. We would then get our information and be able to get that out to the board for a meeting on December 18th.
Jan,
Yep.
you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to know who's driving the car. Is it NTIA?
They have the money.
Okay. Then it sounds like we need to wait for the NTIA and all this stuff of moving everything around. Do we owe anything to the providers? Do we owe anything to the resident? They need to understand that we don't have control of this.
Yep.
And you have identified some good areas.
Yeah.
Yep.
I expect that,
So-
those areas in some way, shape, or form will be project units. Whether they're bigger, smaller, or multiple units, those will be identified. I think this is just a matter of
Fiber
government
came-
moves slow. So,
Yeah, well, Bloomer Broadband, the fiber came down Highway 40. And that area that you're talking about that Bloomer Broadband's going at, after, there would need to be the presence of fiber on the other side. Whether they get there coming down from County M where I am, or whether they continue across from the Whitetail. I guess I don't understand why they, do you know why they went with the rural carrier versus RDOF versus reapplying?
they have applied for every grant, that area, they have applied for essentially every grant possible. So once they didn't get the capital improvement project, then the next one that was available was the USDA's rural, whatever it is, grant. And they reached out and asked for our support in that. And so.
Well, they've had support. They've had support from the townships and the counties since day one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yep.
So.
And these other areas, like you said, it's a no-no that we don't know what the three providers have for infrastructure in place already, right?
I mean, I have a pretty good idea.
We got a good idea, but
Mhm.
I guess I don't know what Spectrum has in place, but maybe
Yeah.
somebody in the area does.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, ultimately, the infrastructure they have in the area should impact the cost to them. Like, if they don't have to run a big trunk,
Yes,
then they will be able to connect everybody at a theoretically a cheaper cost, which will increase their
Yeah.
their ability to get that grant or to apply for. They're going to essentially bid a lower number on these grants, which will help
Yeah.
them. So.
yeah,
And I have up on the screen that this is the scoring criteria that is approved in volume 2. So
yeah.
Can we go back to that schedule?
Sure.
So the ISP deadline would be December 5th. County board meeting would be December 12th.
18th.
Oh, 18th?
Yep.
So,
Our meeting would be the 12th.
oh, okay, okay.
Yep.
That's what I was confused with. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
He's the chair.
Go ahead, Larry.
I understand, and they were talking about cable had been run down 40, and there's been cable on E where my wife has accessed it at a very nice price. But who's getting the jobs completed? Because I think she's had to wait quite a period of time from the time the cable's in the ground, the posts are up and everything else set. Then the second part of that is connecting from that line to the customer. So do we know how many customers are being connected versus how much line is run? And the reason I ask that is that I would assume that these are pretty high-tech skilled jobs in doing their connections. And like everything else, there doesn't seem to be enough people around to do the work that needs to be done. So are they, who's getting connected and who's not? You know, when we're gonna make a decision on who we might want to go with, shouldn't we know who's getting the customers connected?
That's a great segue.
Well,
so
I'm here to help you.
yeah. So yeah, and that's why I wanted to share these points, because as David pointed out, like we'll be picking winners and losers.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't do that. I won't be picking winners. I'm not on the committee. But in my opinion, it shouldn't be done based on a whim. So, and that's where I had put some information in there of, you know, what are those things that you want, that you value, that we should be evaluating as two providers come in and say, hey, I want to bid on this area. And if it is a provider that historically does a bad job of meeting deadlines, that can be a factor that is put into place. So I put in a bullet of some items that could be looked at, and that's where I also wanted to share what the Public Service Commission is going to be looking at. So they'll be looking at a minimal bead outlay. Short version of that is cheaper. So if they're asking for less money from a grant, it's 40 points, right? Priority affordability based on the total of non-promotional 1 gig services. So I assume that is the number of individuals that will receive. Is that about low income, Mark? The priority
Yes.
affordability.
Yeah.
So if you're serving more people that have been identified as being low income, they actually, as part of the requirements that the providers are applying to right now, are part of what they have to do is guarantee prices and discounts for people who have who meet certain qualifications to get decreased costs. So fair labor practices, speed to deployment. So, how quickly can they get stuff in the ground, right? So that's only one point right now. So,
I think there's a lot that's in the ground ready to go. But they haven't made the final connection to the customer for the service. It's right there. You can see it.
Yeah.
So how long do I have to wait? How long do I have to look at it? We worked real hard to get that cable in the ground.
Yeah.
And now how you doing? And I don't know, might be off a little bit, which wouldn't surprise anybody. But, you were talking about, disadvantaged people. I think there ought to be a point or two to, elderly residents. Maybe they're not real excited about it because they've lived their whole life without it. But then on the other end of it, if you've got 4 kids in high school and a couple in kids in grade school, it's a big deal for those families. So I don't, we can't pick and choose which line affects the most kids, but we should keep that in mind. Because it doesn't make any difference how rich you are. If your kids don't have access, it ain't gonna make it, or will it make a difference? I mean, can you go to the open market and buy what we're providing?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Larry makes a good point. If you're where do the school districts, where's the priority for school districts? Because I've seen school districts right in this area. If they have a bad day or blizzard or what, they say, today the school will be accessed remotely. And I don't know if that means they don't have to have a makeup day, but the technology there, today we will have school will be remotely.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't know specifically trying to think through school districts. Of the 3 areas that I shared, that's definitely going to be the Menominee School District, Boyceville, Colfax, and I'm not sure about that area around Whitetail. Is that Elk Mound or Colfax? Anybody?
That could be both.
Yeah.
That could be both.
It's right on the line. So,
yeah.
So,
well,
I mean, you certainly, and Bill isn't here, but I'm certain he would advocate for those areas, for those reasons that you bring up.
Yeah. Yep. It's too bad they didn't dig a little deeper as far as the necessities, like versus school district. Larry brought up a great point. School districts is a big one. I can attest with my grandson with so many different friends. I can't believe how many miles away some of these kids are to go to school, Colfax School District. I'm sure Menominee and Boyceville the same. So.
Yep, in talking with endorsement, that's where it's important with the engagement, because again, there is one point for that letter of support from CAI, which includes school districts. Yeah, because schools are CAIs, so it's important to have that conversation with them. And there's that later round 4 again, if there's any money left over after the first 3 rounds to connect CAIs without gigabyte symmetrical service with that service. But again, that's round 4 if there's any money left over after the previous 3 rounds.
Right. So,
and also it could be a school safety issue as well, Mark. Putting these buses out in these countries with some of the weather we get.
Yep. So, my hope was to get from you as a group some of the areas that you think are important for us to look at, with the understanding that this is what the PSC is gonna look at. So as we look at giving an endorsement to one provider over another, what are some of those areas that you think are important? And don't take the bulleted list that I'm showing right here as anything. That's just me pulling together some examples. What do you think are important? And if you provide me that list, I will come up with a scoring matrix that you can look at our next meeting and tell me what's good and what's bad.
I don't know how to answer that. I guess, I think all of them have technology that's basically the same, right? Ability?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, after hearing Larry, I think the one I know the best, obviously, is because I live here, is 24/7. And the other ones I know about. And I think it's important that we know that they can, how soon can they get the job done once it's approved? Isn't that important? Timeliness, that's the word.
Dan, can you get a listing from the local schools of where their students are located, or is that cheap?
So we don't have to necessarily. We can ask the providers to provide us that information. I mean, I can certainly get the houses that are in a school district, but I don't know. I don't have the demographics of if there are school age children in that. And I don't know if that's something the schools can share.
Well, is it worth looking into?
It is.
I could use myself as an example. I'm a senior, and my son and daughter-in-law, and I got 2 grandkids. So there's 3 generations for you right in one house.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that if the number of.
But would the provider know that he's got that? You know, that's the thing. You might have them in there, but nobody might not know they're there.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the census would have potentially some of that information, but I don't know if they share the number of minors that live in a house. That doesn't necessarily seem something you'd want publicly available. But
So for number of BEAD eligible locations right now, we have a preliminary listing of 368 BSLs within Dunn County that would be eligible for BEAD right now.
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I wish our Colfax guy was here because I think school districts know where people are. I mean, you know, somebody has to figure out bus routes and things like that. And if you have an area cut out that you're bidding on, I think it'd be pretty easy to have an overlay of saying, well, there are this many kids in this district that you're bidding on.
Yep.
It doesn't seem, I mean, you know, for crying out loud, it's, you know, there's got to be that kind of information.
I don't doubt the information exists.
Okay.
It's whether they can share it.
Well-
But I can reach out and identify that.
DPI would have that information, Dan. And I have a contact for that person that may have that information because they have done surveys out there statewide for that.
So I guess from my standpoint, I'll take that as a takeaway that we are going to have the number of school age individuals as a part of our scoring criteria.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think a better approach may be talking about the project area more as a whole, because I think you have to look at it from the ISP perspective. They're trying to do this as efficiently as possible. So they're not going to go skipping houses because there are school age kids in some houses. They're going to want to do as many as they can as fast as they can. And so maybe a better approach would be look at the whole project and say, how long will it take you to connect everyone? And then you don't have to worry about digging into which school age kids are in which houses and trying to schedule that and kind of, because that puts us in a position of really trying to direct the ISP on how to do their work. And to your point, these are complicated projects and they're very specialized in certain cases. There's the main line and there's a crew that does that, multiple crews in a lot of cases. There's the main line, there's the line to the house, there's the splicing on the house, there's the splicing in the PED, and then there's the network connection. So there are, you know, half a dozen different crews specialized in their area. And, you know, I'm going through this right now. They were running the cable next to the road 3 weeks ago. They pulled they ran the fiber up to the house last week, and then someone was here yesterday splicing that in. So all different people, all different crews, all specialized in what they do, and trying to do that as efficiently as and inexpensively as possible. So, you know, the other side of directing them to do it in a certain way probably would affect their cost and ability to do it efficiently and inexpensively.
And you bring up a good point, and I might have not explained that. People who bid on a project unit are required to provide to every location in that unit. So,
But Dan, every location in that unit does not have to have that final hookup.
if the resident chooses not to,
Right, and I'll submit to you that people on fixed incomes have seen their dollar shrink, and they've spent their entire life without sitting down at a computer. And now you're gonna tell me it's gonna cost so much a month more? I say that they're not gonna be a high priority to hook up. And, you know, my point also started was, you know, I think my wife had more than 2 weeks from the time everything was ready to be hooked up in the residence or the office, and when that final, you know, unit came, and, you know, and then, you know, I think they asked for, I think it was 4 or 5 hours to, you know, be there doing their work. That's the last step. So to Terry's comment with the 3 generations, and I mean, you know, I'm not arguing anything one way or the other, but Terry's got 3 generations in one house. You don't have to be a really smart guy to know that Terry may use it some, his son or daughter might use it some, but those kids are gonna use it a lot. So you can't make a decision to just make sure that all the kids have it. But there's a big difference in senior citizens on fixed income wanting to take on another bill than there is, you know, families that kids might need it for school.
But the way I look at it, they're gonna do it as efficiently as they can. They're gonna run it to every
No,
house.
I
If you don't
think
wanna
they
hook
should.
down that house, that's different. But they're gonna go down the road and hook every house. If they're in that area, they're gonna do them all, you know. They'll run it to the house. If they don't wanna hook, they'll just skip them later on. They don't wanna have to pay for the income people, so.
so and what you might be getting into is the affordability aspect of it, right? Is you may want to, if 2 providers are bidding on one area, you might want to pick the one that is going to have the lower cost per subscriber. To prioritize that. That can be a criteria that we can ask. What is your rate going to be? That's part of their submission to the Public Service Commission. There's limits, but that can be a criteria, certainly.
I got a question about our Hay River. That's the only one I'm really familiar with. So that's where I gotta answer my question, but they're surrounded by 3 different providers. And is it gonna be our job to pick one of those to do that area? Or can all three of them come and do the ones that are most, like Charter? The line is right there and can they go up as far as feasible and the other guys come over this way and the other guys come this way? How does that all blend in?
So yeah, that was the collusion question that I asked Mark, because that to me is the ideal way to do it,
Well,
but
it's the only sensible way.
well, we're in government. So, um, no, so we don't know what those project units are. So I drew a circle around this area that I'm showing right here. Potentially the project units could go find a town road that's over here or whatever and say, you know what, the southern edge of that yellow area is one project unit and the northern edge is another project unit and the eastern edge is another project unit. That this area right here is essentially 3 project units.
Who
Which that
decides
all
the
3.
project area?
The Public Service Commission. And like I say, that's what we don't know yet.
So that
To be
part,
able to
we
answer
haven't
that.
got that far yet to the
Right.
point where we're gonna they gotta divide the project areas up before we can say, yeah, these guys would be good here. And
Right. And yeah, and it's really comes down to some of those other aspects of affordability and the ability to do that. And like I said, I know one of those 3 is not going to apply for BEAD.
you can't say.
I don't know if I can or can't, so I'm just choosing not to. So you can guess.
But a problem with what you're saying though, if you had 3 different providers, all right, this one's gonna get 200 houses, the other one's only gonna get 5 houses, it ain't gonna be worth them to do it. So they're not gonna do it. So they have to take the whole unit and make sure everybody gets it, you know? Otherwise, they're gonna skip them 5 and do all the main ones and be done, you know, so.
You gotta figure
Yes,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, and this was, like I said, this was the example that I gave Mark when I had asked about that, because it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the 2 greens on this, on this map, but just take my word for it, there's 2 greens. Charter actually has an area that goes like right through here, and then it comes in, and that was the shape of their RDOF grant. It came down 79 and then it cut in a little bit and then it came back over 79 again. And it just left that little gap right along 79 for, I don't know what reason. But there is a likelihood that as part of putting that in place, that Charter ran a main line right up 79. And they have houses on either side of it that they could very easily provide to. Now, as you come down a little bit further, you get into some town roads that, for the most part, historically, Charter really isn't interested in kind of doing that. So how does that kind of play out? And then if the other provider is 24/7 on the other side, right? If they're like, yeah, we want to do that, but to somebody else's point, like there's a lot of houses right along 79 there. It's more cost effective for them to do those county roads if they can also pick up those people along 79, where they might also have a main connection going there. A lot of these main connections follow the highways. So, I don't know. It's tough. So
More than a lot.
more than a lot.
Wow.
So any other criteria that you think are important as I put together a grid for us to do? And so my intent is to kind of come up with a scoring sheet that we'll use. And similar to the one the public service did, but just something as it relates specifically to us as a group. And then I will reach out to the providers in the area and let them know this is our proposed timeline if you're interested in doing that.
Is local government support the match?
Once again, those were examples, and I think that was kind of the same thing that the Public Service Commission did. If they seem to really be engaged in the government? Is that something that you care about, right? If they reached out to the school districts, to the towns, to all of these people to do that, is that an attribute that you think is important? The Public Service Commission does to the point, to the level of 5 points. But we can base part of our 7 points on how well we think they did.
Talking about matching funds, have you guys thought about if you guys would be able to contribute a match if a provider asks for one from the county?
I have another agenda item to talk about there, but it's not going to be much. I don't know how
Yep,
much
it's not
matching.
required, but I'm just throwing it out there to all the counties. Again, they might come and ask for some, and some might not. So
Right. We're working on paving roads right now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead,
on
Larry.
the matching funds question, has there been discussion? I'm sure there has in the townships. I mean, didn't one township put their whole ARPA money into?
A lot of them did.
So,
Several or more.
so then we need to, is that something that can be used as a point to come our way?
Well, most of the towns that did that are already covered. Yeah. So, and I think for the most part, what the towns that are kind of left over are the ones that providers covered a portion of that because it was already beneficial to them for some other reason to be able to do that. So then you had part of a town that wasn't covered. And now as you go to a town board, it's part of your town isn't covered. Likely the most rural part of your town that exists. So what is the flavor of the board to be able to provide money to a very small number of the constituents? From the county standpoint, it's the same thing, right? Is the county going to give money that's going to benefit those 3 areas, right? The rest of the county is already covered. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying it's not important. I was that, as you put that into your mind, it's a benefits a small portion. And there's no ARPA money left. So, any other items that you think are important? Like I say, there's a link here to this map if you want to go out and look around. You can zoom right on into it. Yes. If not, it's out on the county's website too. Yes. Yes, I did. I can get you a printout too before you leave if you're interested.
Dan, you make a good point about the providers. Like you mentioned or can't mention, one of the providers in that northeast or west area already let they ain't gonna be in the hunt. And from the public or PSC standpoint, I'm sure they're watching. If they're supposed to be picking only based on price, is that what I'm hearing, Mark? So if you got 2 providers going through the same area, if one provider's bid is more than the other provider, and what their service is providing, whatever speed, whatever, is the same. So the PSC is probably going to pick the one with the low cost bid, right?
everything in that scoring criteria is what we're looking at. And again, yeah, obviously cost is a big factor, but again, we're also looking at that technology type, speed of the deployment, quality of service, and how many people are being proposed to serve in that area. So again, looking at all factors. But price is a big one, but it's
Okay.
not the focus.
And
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but fiber is essentially round one.
Correct. And then if there's two applications that are similar in scoring, that'll get moved to round two. And then those providers will have the opportunity to submit new proposals or a proposal that would better their application or not do it. So
So just to show you this map, and we do have to get to this other meeting. But like you can zoom right in. So this is that area in the town of Sherman. So that just as you're at this level, it shows you just as yellow blobs, but you can zoom right on in and you'll see these are all of the houses.
Okay.
So or broadband serviceable locations. So anyway, so that's a good thing to look at. And so, like I said, I will put together, based on that, some criteria for us to look at next time. And we got one other agenda item. Right?
Funding?
Yep. No, so the funding, so we received a grant for some of this bead planning earlier in the year that has offset my wages. So so they'll be bringing something to the committee at some point to ask to make that additional the savings on my wages, the offset of my wages available for broadband stuff. So that'll the board members will see that as a budget adjustment in the future, but just letting you know that that's coming up, and the intent would be to make that funding at the discretion of this committee. And that could potentially be used for match. It's not a lot. Or it could be used for some of the digital navigator or any other types of education or work that would need to be done in the future. So that's what that is.
Okay, any questions? Dan, Mark, anybody? Larry? Larry, you got,
Happy to get some funds to offset Dan's wages, but then we gotta remember, he's probably the smartest guy that made the application for the funding to offset his wages. So, way to go.
and then reminder that waiving permit fees, application fees, or anything like that for the ISP in there can go towards matching as well.
Yeah, we'd have to reinstate all of those fees again so that we could waive them.
okay, item 6. Scheduling next meeting. It was October 10th.
That's
You had that on the, but is that, could that be changed? Has anybody got something else going on? The 9th would work better, but that way people are already here, I think, for other meetings, so.
right. The 9th is fine by me. I did traditionally we had been meeting on that Thursday, and I made this one a Wednesday because tomorrow wasn't gonna work, but I know that's beneficial to the chair because he's got a meeting here at 3:30.
Yeah, every thing. I'd have to make 2 trips to Menominee, that doesn't make sense, but
Let's get a part-time job in town.
I could do that too, yeah.
And then, like Dan, pitch the money into broadband.
October 9th, 1 PM,
Wednesday the 9th, huh?
Wednesday the 9th.
At 1 o'clock.
Does that go to everybody? Terry?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Any other questions? All right. We'll be adjourned.
All right, thank you. You guys have a good day.